How can I tell that this mother eagle with eaglets around her base is an Asian import? This piece displays very well. Its original size and weight in comparison to the Westmoreland made piece, it's identical in every single way. And as I mentioned, it does display well. Westmoreland did make this piece in blue. It was about the same shade of blue. The first thing you'll notice is the amount of white that brings out where different places in the mold. And the glass had a homogeneous mix. It's just something about the chemistry in this glass that they used in Asia. Then when it touched the cast iron mold, it would bring the white part of the mixture to the surface, and it appears all through the piece. There's white shading, particularly noticeable on these ends, not so much on the sides, but there's a lot of white shading in here where the blue separated. The next thing is the detail. I brought a little Westmoreland hen for comparison. The detail on her is easy to see. And this is where experience comes to play. The detail is all there, but you don't necessarily feel it. It's a very nice detail, but the glass was hot enough that when it was removed from the mold that had the detail and gives it the detail, that it would kind of level out and lose enough of the detail to give it a nice feel without changing the appearance. Her neck here is heavily detailed, but you can't really feel it, but you can see it. On here, it's like a metal file. It's very crisp detail. It's all the temperature when it was removed from the mold that gives it that sharpness. And post-processing, running it through the temperature of the leer, where they let the piece cool down so it doesn't crack when the cold air in the factory hits it. They set it in a leer to cool. The leer temperature can remove some of that detail, and this detail remains very sharp and crisp, almost like a metal file like you use on your fingernail. You know, you get that real scratchy feel to it. Another tip is that on the flat surfaces, this is going to be hard to show up on a camera, but maybe you can hear, there's little pickers on here. You can take your finger and pick little spots of glass that are sticking up. This is because the cast iron mold wasn't polished to a high finish. So when you look at their mold, the actual metal that this glass is molded in between, it's not going to be real pretty. There's going to have defects in it because there's little swirls here, tool marks, that kind of thing. And that appears on all the flat surfaces of the piece where you have these little pieces of glass. Hear that? Sticking up, it won't come off naturally. It's glass. You won't find that on a Westmoreland piece. That's kind of like a small manufacturing defect. And you can see the amount of white that pops out on this surface. It's kind of like almost, I believe it to be a temperature thing. Whenever they put the hot glass in the mold, the temperature of the mold, if the mold wasn't preheated or didn't remain preheated during the manufacturing process, the temperature difference would draw the different colors in the glass to the surface. It's almost like it wasn't mixed properly, but I do believe it's caused by temperature. The next thing is, this is called a basket weave base. Everybody used one. I mean, these appear in 1,000 different variations. The link I gave you to the National Milk Glass Collector Society talks. You can see how many different companies use this base. Very popular because your birds do like nests and baskets. This bottom is plain, and you can see a lot of the variations, probably not with the light reflecting on it, but there's a lot of scratchy stippling here. It's just mold a lack of polish in the mold. The Westmoreland, and I did buy this as a Westmoreland piece, always finished their basket bottoms with a weave. See that crosshatch on there? That is the way Westmoreland finished their bases. The sides look the same as the copy, the blue copy. That bottom still looks like a basket. This bottom doesn't. This is an older Westmoreland. It's not marked. I think these eagles in later years were marked. I don't think I have one to find where the mark would be. And of course there's always a chance Westmoreland wasn't marked and just stickered. But this is not a Westmoreland piece. And as I mentioned in a Facebook posting, I started out as a Westmoreland collector. So even though this is a nice, decent piece of glass, probably a 80% satisfactory copy, and it does display well, it's not Westmoreland, doesn't fit in my collection. That's all I could tell the difference. I collect Westmoreland and French. Everywhere I go in my house, there's Westmoreland. Everywhere. That's an Atterbury up there. I live within 50 miles of most major glass companies from 1880 up until 1980. Although probably about 80 miles from Fenton. But Westmoreland, Jeanette, McKee, Challenor and Taylor, Atterbury, all the big names were within 50 miles of my house. I did branch off into French. That's a Valerie Salt candlestick back there. It's called the Siren. There's the big original Westmoreland doorstop bulldog and the reclining lady soap dish with a penguin's puck in it. And I'm half Swedish, so we got one of those. I forget what those roosters are called. That's one. This is just some of my downstairs Westmoreland I have upstairs and basement Westmoreland. It is everywhere. So on that Blue Eagle, it spends its days in a unused refrigerator on a shelf. There's that plate's not Westmoreland, that's somebody else's Easter. And that egg's not Westmoreland. And that rabbit is Imperial. Imperial is probably about 60 miles from here. Bellevue, Ohio. Maybe it's Belmont, Ohio. It's Bell something. I was there to visit their museum. It was closed that day. Even in the front window. That's Westmoreland. Panel grape creamer, ashtray, and a daisy basket. And there's a little bird. Some Westmoreland bud vases. Other front. And the rest of my cheap Asian imports. The ugliest piece of glass I ever saw. I swear I thought they were McKee when I bought them. I first started collecting. That's when you learn the difference between imports and originals. Is this guy a mustard container from 1900 or one of the remakes after 1950 by Westmoreland from the same mold? The old ones had mold numbers. This one has a mold number. That's number 2. After 1950 they started putting a WG next to the number 2. This doesn't have one. But what tips me off is, see that eye doesn't have any paint on it? And that eye has paint on it. In the 1900s they used cold paint which fell off. That's why all of the old plates have missing paint on them. It was applied cold and then shipped. The ones in 1950 forward, they put a little pink on the inside of the ear and on the eyes, and then they fired it on, and it doesn't come off. So the fact that this is missing pink on one eye tells me it's an older piece. I don't have a base for them. I have bases that match, but they already have something sitting on them. This one he gets to be part of my Easter displays. The eagle normally sits up here on top of this upstairs refrigerator with a bent door that doesn't work anymore. But like I said, I have glass everywhere. What do we have in here? Atterbury hand holding dove. A little green Westmoreland robin back there on a nest in the corner. A bunch of those little birds on stumps. Anybody else keep milk glass in their refrigerator? All Christmas stuff down here, ready to go for next year. All good. There's the Atterbury line back there in the corner. After my dad passed, my mom turned the room upstairs into a kitchen and rented it to a couple ladies. And there's a sun-purpled eagle lion, what I thought was Atterbury Fenton fish dish. Yeah. Got a dolphin calm port up there. Anybody else got that? It's just everywhere. There's my hobnail. Westmoreland English hobnail. I try to give away wedding bowls, but I keep ending up with more. There's some old quilt. All up top here too. Yep. There's a couple old quilt pictures, two different sizes. Tumblers. Even in the drawers. Some key plates, I think. These ones back here. Stack them. Underneath the sink. This is where my Westmoreland mustards, cream and sugars live. Camera started doing weird stuff. Extra mains. Atterbury fox. Westmoreland urn, roses and bows, 1930s Fenton intaglio grape bowl. There's some Della Robbia back there, three fruits, I can't tell. Extra cats, some of those dresser set bottles, and my oldest pre-1920 dresser set with paint. Cherry thumbprint cookie jar back there, and Westmoreland mustard, cream and sugars. Yeah, another cat back. There's another Dewey. Draping tassel. I guess the point I'm trying to make by walking around the house, opening up drawers, more cats, raised wing swans, hands holding doves. That's a Jeanette glass small wedding box, ring and petal. That's an Atterbury chick on an egg pile. I got 3 of these hobnail swung vases and some more wedding bowls. Cats there everywhere. Rows of them. You touch enough glass, you know what's an import. That's the point. You know, some of it's in books, some of it's not. It's the feel, it's the look, it's the touch, it's the designs. I ain't going down the basement. I got what you see up here is probably about 40% what I have been on video so far. I have a lot of mistakes and other things. This girl's an Atterbury. Where else would I keep my money except in a kitty? I just got this a couple weeks ago. Why are there dollar bills under each one of these? Because every time I walk through the room, they sit there and rattle. Drive me crazy, so that's just a little bit of padding. Lots of cats. Even this lives in the bedroom. I've had more fun with this piece than any piece I ever owned. Of course, this is a vase that fell over. Why did it fall over? After the factory closed, Louise Plews, one of the well-known decorators at Westmoreland, lives near here. would take plain pieces. People would bring them to her. They already had them. And she would put the factory roses and bows on it and bake them in her oven to fire on the paint. Well, if you don't get the temperature right, or you you go shopping and come home and you were in there too long, it fell over. It just got too hot and fell over. Well, she didn't throw it away. She gave it back to the person, Joanne Wolf, who is the treasurer of the Westmoreland Collectors Club, has a shop in Youngwood, Pennsylvania, with most of her collection is there for sale. Some of it anyway. And gave it back to her. And I saw it, and I bought it from her because I just think it's about the cutest thing ever. Because once you're a junkie, you'll basically buy anything. To sum up, he's an Asian import.